Okay, so why exactly is ZA considered a Legends game again? What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they're continuing the Legends subgenre of titles within the Pokémon franchise. It would have been a weird waste of a one-off if Arceus was the only one, but what I'm wondering is why did they think ZA specifically should be a Legends-style game? Because let's be honest, when we first heard that they were making a Kalos Legends game, this is not what we had in mind. Probably something more along the lines of the ancient war that we heard so much about, and the firing of the ultimate weapon, that sort of thing. I don't know of anyone who didn't imagine that as the Kalos-based version of the Legends experience, but what we got was most certainly not that. Now, it is true that we already knew that story, so showing it to us again might not have been narratively satisfying. Many prequels don't exactly stick the landing after all, but they could have woven in some unknown part of the history on which they could shed some light, just like how Hisui explored aspects of Sinnoh's past that nobody even knew to ask about yet. So I think that's what we were all expecting when we heard it announced. But even so, it could have easily been any other point of interest in Kalos' past for us to discover, and it still would have matched the idea that many players had in their heads of what the Legends title means. After all, for something to be a legend, it has to be from a long time ago, right? But instead, after a perplexing trailer that gave us really no information, we learned that ZA was to take place in a modern setting. Basically just the same as any other Pokémon game from the main series. Not even in the far future setting, like some were hoping after the trailers that showed off advanced technology, and given the themes of Scarlet and Violet, that didn't seem like an outlandish idea. But spoiler alert, I guess, for certain events in the game, it was clearly after X and Y because AZ was reunited with his Floette, but if you look at a character that we know, like Emma, you can tell that she has grown since the last time that we saw her as a girl. But at the absolute most, this could have been like maybe 20 years, but probably way less than that. Closer to the 2-year time gap we're used to of Johto or Black and White 2 than even the larger gap of the Let's Go games, however long that was supposed to be, having Blue, Red, and Leaf act like adults. I'm not saying that an updated Kalos game is out of the question for potential new projects, but that proposal is more of a standard Z version or the regular kinds of remakes they routinely do, so when the scope is so limited compared with Legends Arceus, why was this one deemed experimental enough to inherit that specific designation? It can't be for the actual legends in the game because Arceus has way more of those. Hisui was not solely about the ancient llama god, there were also important beats for the Sinnoh mascots, and even the Lake Trio before you could complete the story. ZA of course focuses on Zygarde, but then it makes you finish the main quest before you can unlock Xerneas and Yveltal, so that's already restricted. And then you compare that with the rest of their stable and Arceus blows them out of the water. Not only is every other legendary Pokémon from Gen 4 in the Hisui region, but all of the mythicals too, with even a mini story event playing out every time you encounter one. Now, ZA does have Diancie, but I feel like that's only because it had a Mega, and they really wanted to say that all of them were here along with all of the new ones, because they didn't even bother having the other two mythicals from Gen 6 in the game at all. There is the DLC to come out with Hoopa marketed all over it, but that just means this Legends game launched with about a dozen less legends in it than last time. They could have at least included the legendary birds like the original X and Y did, but they didn't even do that, let alone a whole different trio from another region and add another member to it like Enamorus. ZA couldn't even be bothered to have all of the Pokemon they were supposed to. They would never bother creating a new one. So if it's not a Legends game for the setting or for the actual Legends themselves, then I can only assume that it's because of the battle system. I mean, that's the main thing that I can see that causes ZA to stand out from any of the other Gen 9 games, since you can send out attacks in real time, waiting for them to cool down, and hopefully dodging some of them as well. I can see how it would be a bit weird to pick up a regular labeled Pokémon game for the first time in the last 15 years, and then likely get turned off once you see this is the battle system because it's not what you were expecting. So I don't think that standard Pokemon will ever fully get rid of turn-based battles, but is experimental battling really the cornerstone of what a Legends game should be? Sure, the Hisui region had the strong and agile styles, but I feel like that was just an add-on to the main draw of diving headfirst into a living Japanese painting. So real-time combat is definitely a change, but making that the sole trait determining a Legends title sort of dilutes that branding. Now, I'm not saying that ZA is a travesty, I've had a lot of fun with it, but once I got used to that gameplay loop, all I could think was, this is basically just a regular Pokemon game but with extra steps. The setting, the characters, the writing, it's all pretty much on par with Scarlet and Violet, except the scope of this game is only within a single city, which can make it feel a lot more restrictive than a giant open world region, especially when you can't go inside most of the buildings, which is most of what your surroundings are made of. All of that to say, this version of Lumiose is about as big or smaller than one of the sections from Hisui last time, where you could freely dash around or even fly through the air. So lacking that freedom makes the ZA game feel microscopic at times, even smaller than the 3DS games that inspired it. So does that sound like a Legend? Maybe the Legend subset of games was all about shaking up the battle system, but that was not picked up on by the general public, I can tell you that much, and I'm a bit worried that they're wasting all of their goodwill. To Pokemon fans, the implied promise of a Legends game was an experience unlike any other in the main series. Some far-flung time and place that let us explore the Pokemon world in a new way that we never could have before, while still being able to collect the pocket monsters as we love to do. So it's a bit of a break in that unspoken contracts to suddenly have another Legends game go all in on changing the combat and very little else. I mean, it was neat to have abilities again, and plenty of people do love Megas being back, plus the canon reason for more Megas existing that we never saw before, being the ultimate weapon that we fired back in X and Y, is a brilliant touch, I'll give them that. But I can't help but feel that the ordinary average setting of, quote, modern-day world that we see in every Pokemon game squanders the limitless potential that a Legends game had, at least after that first one came out. And now that fans know that Legends games have diminishing returns, are they really going to be as excited for the next one? When instead of a Johto game in the far past like they might have expected, it's basically just a new Let's Go Crystal? I mean, really truly imagine if the first Legends game had been Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl instead of Arceus. Just a slightly updated version of the region that we already knew, but shrunken in scope. It would have been a huge flop, with people saying that it wasn't worth that experimentation. It can't just be me, right? I'm not reading too much into the fact that the word Legends is in the title, that it should actually mean something, whether that's alluding to the pledges of the imaginative story, or the overabundance of actual legendary Pokemon. And from what I can tell, ZA doesn't deliver on either one of those. It's fine that Pokemon wants to tinker with the battle system, good even so that it doesn't get too stale, but I would rather that happen in a new version of Pokemon Stadium or something, so that they could save these special once-in-a-generation projects for something truly outstanding. Well, ideally they could just be a bit more courageous with the risks that they take with the mainline Pokemon games, and then those could be a bit more out of the box instead. But since that is highly unlikely, the Legends moniker was our best gateway to live out fantastical realms of forgotten fairy tales within the Pokemon world. But sadly, that premise seems to be dwindling with each passing entry, while the audience is a little less forgiving each time. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe the real-time combat is worth using the Legends title, and people really are looking to disrupt the gameplay loop over escapism as their most pressing desire. But do you think ZA earns the Legends title status? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!